Everyone check it out. They don't want you to be excited. You were supposed to do anything and forget about that.
It's Rick.
Yeah. Anything new? I've got a couple of clients, one of which was from here, presenting here. So, Gwydion, can we work with Gwydion?
Excellent. Good. Paul, Duncan.
How are you? Good, good.
How are you doing, Larry?
Doing all right?
I liked your picture teaching the young minds in front of the class.
All his fault. Corrupting.
Hey, anytime you can
Do you remember where to get the old version of Skype? Because this thing keeps on crashing.
I think Bara keeps a copy around someplace.
Yeah.
But
What is going on?
Hey, you're busy. Do you know if they
How's it going? It's good to see you, man.
Do you know if they have a cups over there? Out there, there's like
Are we out of cups?
By the way, I was out at the other side of entertainment. Paul Nurath
Is that enough room?
Walter Somo is now in charge of business development. That was our first Games for Windows contact with Microsoft. When that was
what's the name?
Walter took one look at you changed your start button?
Mike Berger. That's Mike. Nice to meet you.
Start up.
Is that a official company name there?
That's group within VMware. Social labs is like they kind of wander around doing like one day knowledge transfer, like huge workshop and stuff. Okay. And I'm a VMware user group leader. So I used to be here in Chicago. I was moving up here. I'm trying to get the Detroit team on. Guys like what are you doing?
Your show here in Michigan? Yeah. Not that I know of. That's the front. You always got options on the front seats. Yeah, you got to ask questions. You got the doctors up there. It's like working with an magician. You get to be involved in tricks. Law. No, I do. Yeah, I do entrepreneurial law. I do startups, contracts, and hopefully funding and exits. Help people hopefully buy those islands. Make video games, enterprise software, and everything else. I started a big law firm. I was a partner. Went off on my own career. Larry contacted me. I'll just so I've been involved in this since the start of
you gave me the front seat.
So I've got
West, San Diego. And he followed that dream, and then I said I want to get money.
I'd rather just fix the sky.
And my parents always told me since I was like,
Here you go. Oh, that's it. That was your shit. That was your stint. You scared them off.
don't spell that down.
But yeah, you know, I grew up doing merchant activity and venture capital, so basic stuff. And then in 2000, 2008, venture capital really slowed down here. And so they said, go find something else. And said, I really love tech and software, so I taught myself SaaS contracts and software development, custom software. We had a lot of clients at the firm I worked at that were big enterprise clients and had their own internal health. Just kind of getting into the health or need to have data protection and privacy protection, server infrastructure, and what terms they use in our contracts. And so I learned that and did that, kept some of those clients when I left, and then building up my books. Exciting, fun. I love entrepreneurs, I love this energy. A lot of the times when big law firms are a little priced out, and I like to be able to be flexible and say, hey, I want you to get the books right. We'll figure it out.
It's a lot more messy, I guess, with large scrutiny versus startup early and we need to build for
It's true, although I would say that the sophistication level of bigger places tends to be, we don't have to like get around to this way, it's a little bit more automated. The entrepreneurs are great, I love the role that you're as a lawyer, but you've got important security, consulting, business strategies, things like that, because they know that what they can really see RPG is they don't know anything about actually and so you can have that kind of conversation saying, here's what a company does, here's what the company does, here's how you sell equity, here's what we do with a promissory note, here's what we do with you have those conversations, and I enjoy it. I'm feeling really happy and proud of what I do. I like this, I help try and get people up to speed as to what they do in terms of organizing themselves.
I7 16 gigabytes, not as fast as it could be.
Yeah,
You know what though?
Larry had me talk at the first meeting about what essentially what a lawyer does from a corporate perspective.
we keep everybody in line and make sure no one does stupid stuff to get us sued.
Well, I help you get organized and limit your liability. You can sign your name.
One of the things that I like to say is that lawyers are the only people at a company that get paid extra for what doesn't happen.
I try not to say no. I try to get deals to yes. I'm a practical lawyer. Sometimes you have to say that idea terribly.
There's years ago when I first started working with startup, we had a funny conversation with a lawyer who didn't know what source code was.
Okay.
Who demanded source code. I said, well, what do you think source code is? And she said, it's that code you put in to unlock the game.
There you go. She wanted keys.
If you're a lawyer, I'm not ever giving you source code unless it's like warranted.
That's how I came to know the folks in Iron Mountain.
Oh, God.
As far as I know, there's still an escrow there.
They're still my escrow provider for software escrows.
Cold storage. They're the best at it.
Yep, I was just
we'll get to see my user icon. That's the one I'm using these days.
I like it. Mine is literally a spathy. I'm not even joking.
You can tell these Doan guys are close and price this food.
So I'm curious. I recognize the voice of Wayfair. Hey, I tell people about this game that I saw here. All over. I love that. Yeah.
I'm Josh.
Hi, Josh. I'm Rick. Nice to meet you.
Is there a group?
This is Erika here. Have you seen Erika? I have not. But as we said a long time ago, it wasn't my job to watch it.
Okay, so
That's awesome.
Should I tell him Nathan to get ready?
First bills I've ever presented to people before I got The structure of the game hasn't really changed too much. It's mostly style.
So how are things at Doan?
Not too bad. We got our event system up and running, so been making those.
Are you feeling more and more comfortable as the days go on?
Handicap features, things like that.
I would say so, yeah.
Good.
Like, revenue did decline a bit since launch, but that's what we expected. Today we did some like long-term planning and trying to like think of our next title, like where we want to expand to, like hiring plans, basically a lot of long-term stuff.
Hiring plans. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Didn't you guys go to career fair at one point?
Yeah.
Was that
Last year we were
required?
at the startup. There was like at least 30 resumes that we picked up, and we were like in the back corner.
Yeah.
So, a lot of interest.
That's great.
I'm not saying that.
We might be there again. Probably through Desai again. Desai usually gets a table there, so we might
Cool.
Medium 10 size, what the hell am I looking at? Whereas like,
Marco will bring these classes.
Yeah, Marshall made
That's why there's so many.
I tried it once, I still think you make sure you tweet out when you're I don't know if I can like have someone launch party thing going on or something.
Alright! Hello! My turn to talk. Tell him a dad. So thank you. This is an extraordinary audience. I got to tell you guys, especially if you're here for the first time, that this is the 11th month we've been in session. So 11 months ago, I negotiated with Spark to be able to use their space. And the idea was that we'd have the first session and see if anybody showed up. Looks like people showed up. So we've been doing this for quite a while. We usually have 2 to 3 speakers live. That's been a tradition, that's been the way we've operated every week. This week we're going to do something a little bit different and kind of exciting. Exciting meaning, boy, I sure hope this works. Bringing in a speaker remote. Earlier this week, this is actually a friend of mine, I'll do the intro in a couple of minutes, but earlier this week I noticed that the IGDA, I should also tell you, we start out, we've been running our stuff through Meetup. The IGDA certification is fairly new. If you guys have not signed up on the Meetup page, you should. At this time, we're not requiring dues. Free is like a really cool thing, right? And we have pizza. I mean, what could be better than that? Free plus pizza, right? That's a win right there. If you have not done so, you should. Hey, what's up? You should sign up. You should, and you can add onto your LinkedIn, your whatever social pages you have that you are a member of IGDA Ann Arbor, because it's free and it sounds good, right? And you guys are mostly students trying to get a resume together. You don't have to raise your hand, but go ahead.
If it's IGDA Ann Arbor, shouldn't it just be IGD AAA?
It should. We're being geeks. We would go for IGD A to the third.
Yeah.
So
At least in writing.
been there and done that, right? So that's really cool. One of the things that being part of IGDA is we have access to a whole another layer of people that are potential speakers. There was just a really good speaker that was up at IGDA Toronto speaking on developing games in Unity. And something I'd like to have here. I've actually been in contact with the Unity guys on behalf of one of the companies that's a member here, and I've asked them about having somebody come in, and they're like, "Yeah, we'd love to send somebody to your IGDA branch. Where are you?" And I say, "Michigan." They said, "We'll get back to you in the spring." But Toronto, our southern neighbor in Canada, right, Windsor, right, little Windsor joke there. So I was in contact with the person. I said, would you be willing to stream in a Unity tutorial for people? And this is a guy that's got quite a bit of experience. The answer was yes. So I'm really hoping to break ground on this. Now, having prefaced that, leading edge, bleeding edge. I guess you guys have all heard that. I'm kind of hoping that this is going to work. So before I get to that speaker, I'm going to ask a couple minutes of your indulgence, and I'm going to do a sound test. And for that purpose, I'm going to use a video from Night Dive Studios. It's the backer video. If you haven't seen it yet, some people have, but if you haven't seen it yet, let me know what you think.
Hi backers, this is Jason Fader, Game Director on a reboot of System Shock. We're going to be trying something new and showing you clips of what we're working on. Please keep in mind that it's still early in the project and everything is a work in progress. Since this is our first time doing a video like this, we're going to talk about some fundamentals like art and level design direction. Welcome back to Citadel Station.
Hey everyone, Kevin Manning here, the art director on System Shock. As we go through some of the concept art, we want to take an opportunity to dive into how it's been translating into engine and our process. First, a little backstory. I started on the project about a year ago as the lead artist, and just as the switch to Unreal was happening. It was an interesting time for sure, as our small team learned a new tool set, began prototyping, and explored all the new options we had for moving forward. With this new clean slate, we began discussing how it would affect the art style. The team, the public, and our Kickstarter backers were all split between the retro look of the demo and reimagining it similar to what Doom and Wolfenstein had done. After months of tests, both internal and external, we pulled all the constructive feedback we could and began to make headway. After taking on the role of the art director about 7 months ago, we shifted gears and began rebuilding everything. We defined a pipeline where the concept artist would generate rough 3D blockouts of the assets and refine them in 2D. The beauty of this method is its overall speed and development. Those 3D blockouts could then be used by our artists to rapidly prototype areas. Seeing everything in 3D quickly puts the big picture right in front of everyone so that we can define problematic areas, places we need more concept, or more information from design. One thing to take note of as you look at the in-game levels is that as we build this game, a lot of what you see here will be revisited and refined as we close in on finalization and release. Things like environmental effects, propping, item and creature placement will all be iterated on until the experience is both visually interesting and fun. Between the tools of Unreal and our talented team, we're not only able to hit that System Shock style, but we can do it quickly. A major concern on this project has always been scope. And as we move forward, we're adopting new ways to optimize our processes to deliver the best quality possible in a reasonable amount of time. Thousands of assets have already been created in the last few months, and thousands more are coming. In the coming months, I look forward to diving into each department with you in these videos. We'll walk through the process of initial direction, 2D concept, 3D art, animation, review, and finalization through all of our departments. Thanks for watching this video, and there's a lot more to come.
Hey, this is James Henley with the status report from the level design team. I gather there have been some concerns about the ways in which we might be altering the decks, so I thought I'd elaborate on that a little, starting with how the original game's levels fit into the equation. We want the System Shock reboot's levels to reflect the essence of their original counterparts. The levels are analyzed, deconstructed, and provide some key points and framework. For each area we ask ourselves, what was this level to the original Shock? What did it express about the state of Citadel Station and the ongoing events? What are its hallmarks, the tricks, traps, recognizable bits of geography that we can leverage or pay homage to? Sometimes it's small shades or details like code numbers or spawn placement, while other instances are a bit more obvious. This is also an opportunity for us to employ the fruits of 2 decades worth of progress and refinement in design principles. And hang on, I think somebody just muttered, cinematic corridor shooter under their breath. Okay, fair concern. Let's talk about the vision. Our goal has been to ground Citadel Station's levels in believability, to couch them in realistic, recognizable contexts taken from the world around us. Medical deck, for instance, evokes modern hospitals that would be capable of housing both long and short-term patients. It's one of the facilities to deal with both the day-to-day and emergency concerns of the station. Citadel is a long way from home after all, and Trapped-Em's employees have to be able to live there. Some of our designs have also necessitated adjustments to layouts in order to support a variety of playstyles and approaches to problem solving. You can skulk around, maybe slip into some of the vents, avoid your enemies, slip past security, explore Citadel Station without drawing too much attention. Alternatively, you can assess the battlefield and get yourself a first strike advantage through manipulation of the environment or application of sheer force. My goal is to provide you with a toolbox and let you work out ways to progress through a deck rather than locking you into a strictly linear route. There are many ways to put your resources to work as you seek to survive the station under Shogun's control. In an effort to further create a more believable world space, we've also been evaluating UE4 streaming options in the hopes of creating a mostly seamless world to explore with minimal load springs to interrupt the experience. We want Citadel to feel like your entire world, albeit a cruel and ruthless one, rather than a set of distinct levels. To be clear, I'm not talking about open world here. I'm talking about having options and a sense of agency. We're looking to bring you a Citadel station that's equal parts familiar and fresh. Well, I've been seeing some unusual activity down on the computer notes for a while here, so I'm gonna go check that out. It's probably nothing. Hi everybody, Jason here again. Just gonna show you some random stuff that we've been working on. This right here is one of our test maps. We use test maps to try out things, and you probably have seen some of the shatter tech before in some of our prior videos, so I'm just going to show you a little bit of how we're playing around with it. This little mutant guy right here is nice and frozen. Let's shoot him in the center of his body and see how he shatters. Oh, poor guy. Let's see, how should we shoot at this guy? Let's shoot him in the leg. And it just kind of collapses. And then we can keep shooting at it to break him up little bits. And then these two guys. What should we do about them? Let's see. First, let's freeze them. And what a dramatic pose he's making. Let's take this guy in the head. Oh, and he knocked that guy over. Oh, sorry. So this shatter technology is still in an early state. There's still a bit more that we're going to be doing with it. But yeah, stay tuned for more stuff on shatter, and I'm going to show you guys another section. Okay, and I preset this test map, and I'm going to show you guys another cool thing we've been working on. So instead of freezing these guys with this weapon right here, it's pretty powerful, and we've been working on a limb dismemberment system. So for example, and the damage is really, really high in it, so it's going to one-shot these guys basically. So I'll shoot this guy in the leg, and he's now legless. Not Legolas, but he's legless. I guess that is kind of funny. Let's see, shoot up some other limbs, and yeah, he's not too happy. This guy, let's just go for a headshot, and where did his head go? Okay, it's somewhere around here. Just went flying off. And we can dismember more of him if we want. It's still the early stages of this. We're planning on doing a lot more interesting things with this technology, but it's a good start. Let's see. And these guys, let me see if I can. Oh, how'd I get up here? And it's kind of bugging out a little. Again, all this technology is a work in progress. So let's see. Let's decapitate this guy and see if we can find out where his head goes. Okay, bounce. There it is. It's got a giant thing stuck in it, and we can just explode it with stuff and roll it around. It's pretty fun. Let's see. How should we dismember this guy? Let's take his arm. And poor guy lost his arm. And now let's take his head. Yep. And that's basically it. So please let us know what you thought of these videos. If you'd like us to do more of these for future Kickstarter updates. And thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.
So cool. I guess the sound worked. That was satisfactory. A couple of things about the way we work at Night Dive. Jason, who's the game director, and James, who's the level designer, are both based out of Southern California. Kevin Manning, who's the art director and has spoken here, lives about 20 miles away from here. I live in Ann Arbor. So we've got people in this area, we've got people in SoCal. The company is headquartered out of Vancouver, Washington. We have no physical, somebody says, "Oh, what's your address?" It's 127. You know that joke. But it's interesting the way that we're working on that and how it's evolving. I believe that without fear of contradiction, that most companies today communicate electronically, even if they're in the same office. So everybody's in the Slack channel, right? Everybody's using Jira or some task manager, whether it's Basecamp, however you're doing it. It's weird that we think that we have to be in the same place to type into a Slack window. Right, if you stop and think about it, if that's the way we're communicating within the company, if that's the way tasks are being assigned and you're checking stuff off, what difference does it make where you're at? The guys that did Basecamp in a book called Rework said that if you insist that everybody comes into your office in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, London, wherever, if you insist that everybody comes into that office and has to be there by 9 o'clock on Monday, then don't say you hire the best of the best. You hire the best people that can be at that office at 9 o'clock on Monday, right? I mean, that's really what it is. Kevin's got 2 young kids, and I shouldn't pick on him, but he's got 2 young kids in this area. He does a lot of daddy stuff during the early part of the day. Most of the other people don't come on until West Coast time, so noon here is 9 a.m. their time, and let's face it, most developers aren't on at 9 a.m. So it works out pretty well. He's able to do stuff with his kids. The flip side to that is that while it's great for him, it's also great for us because we can hire people for less money, right? I mean, he doesn't have to pay for a babysitter, so we're kind of getting that put back into the project. So, one of the artists on the team is based out of Hungary. We are his side hustle. He's done a lot of the stuff, a lot of the design stuff that you saw in the reception area. That whole thing was done by him. His day job is working on some show called Game of Thrones. I couldn't outpay him, so but we were able to get him because of that. So it's kind of an interesting thing. All right, I had a couple of notes. One that I had addressed earlier that when you come here, especially for you guys that are here for the first time, this is a work in progress. We are evolving it, and we're trying to meet people's needs. We've had several companies from here. 2 of them are your clients. You said 1, but 2 of them are your clients. If you've got Gwydion now, you've also got these guys, right?
We're in process.
Okay.
Clients that I'm not allowed to name, Larry, but we'll work on that.
Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies, right? We've had companies here that for whom it's been a forum. It's not that this is the measure of success, but at some point they're going to have to get pictures, they're going to have to appear at various places. And this is kind of a comfortable setting. We're forgiving if stuff doesn't always quite work the way it should. So that's that. Oh, first thing I got to mention for community business, one of the companies that's been here, a really good company, deserving of support company called Spellbound. I don't know how many people were here for their presentation. So they are an AR company, AR and VR, but mostly an emphasis on AR. But they serve a particular audience, kids and folks that are in hospitals that have long wait times. So they do all kinds of cool stuff for that. They are running a Kickstarter right now. There are 4 days left. They have not met their goal. If you guys have a couple of dollars to spare, Spellbound is a worthy cause. Go to Kickstarter and search for Spellbound. Another thing that we try to commemorate are occasions, and I personally never miss a chance to embarrass one of my friends. So can you all join me in wishing Austin a happy birthday? So, okay, hopefully Skype won't crash on me again, and if it does, it's not my fault. Let's see, hopefully. Oh, jeez. We might have an issue here. Let me see if I can do a cast.
Would we like Nathan to go? Would we like Nathan to go first?
That could be a good case. Let me just also see if
I'm fully ready to give a detailed analysis of EA's acquisition of Respawn.
I'm actually really content with you about that.
All right.
I worked at Visceral Studio.
Yeah.
Who was doing the same sort of stuff as Respawn.
Yep.
Worked for EA, shut them down.
Yeah. All right, well, in the future, I'm going to use Google Hangouts.
I'm going to clearly under the road for 30 days.
Let him know that we're going to have to reschedule.
Shut down Visceral. So there's a lot of interesting strategy.
Anybody got an extra notebook?
Yeah. An extra notebook computer.
Oh, so you got Skype on your book? Yeah. Mark, you have Skype on there? I have Skype on here, yeah. Bring it on up. Let's plug it in.
I can't give you my work computers, Larry. No, I actually I sponsor a podcast called Easy Allies, which is the old Game Trailers crew, and they regularly ask me legal questions. So I did a whole segment on fiduciary duty, and then this week they asked me about breaking down the acquisition of Respawn by Electronic Arts. So I wrote 3,000 words or some odd thing about how earnouts and right of first refusal work, and how 455 million is 455 million. Discussed the strategy that EA was employing while in the road for window. Clearly, when they decided to come in, these are informed by each other, at least, if not directly conditional. So, I mean, that's as I said to the Easy Allies guys, this is my wheelhouse. I came to law to do mergers and acquisitions and venture capital. So you talk to me about a $500 million acquisition of a company that's 6 years old, and I say, well, that's something I want to write about. That's interesting.
I was also down when I survived the layoff, but they laid off 20% of and this is when they bought Vacant.
Yep. No, I think they saw an opportunity in Respawn. They're more familiar with Respawn in general as a gas company. Right? That's the direction they're heading anyway. And I think if I had to guess from the politics that you can see from the outside, that Amy Hennig's led Visceral team was pissing them off. I mean, honestly. And so that combined with, hey, we have to decide whether we're going to spend $500 million on this other team because the window's 30 days, said, all right, well, then we have to cut one of these loose. And goodbye, Visceral. Sorry for making you make Hardline. Good job on Dead Space. That was nice 10 years ago. Did you work on Dead Space?
So I was there.
I love that game.
I was there when Dead Space was literally a whiteboard on the wall that said "Space Zombies?" So when I started,
I love that anecdote.
When I started there, I basically badgered literally anybody who would listen to me. Why the hell aren't we making Sister Child? I was on the Godfather team because I'm the same floor as the Bond team. I sort of did split time. So I was there when we finished Bond. This company as well as this was under the guys who later founded Sledgehammer. They were the executive producers I worked with for Bond. They said, well, we were starting on the next one. I don't know if those are anyway, who cares now? Started on that. Those executives decided to leave. Then, like 2 days later, they decided they were coming back. And oh, by the way, we were doing that. Which actually started off like this. But that all happened was
that little moment that flipped in EA's history, the Mirror's Edge Dead Space sequence, the glorious time in Dante's Inferno. See, Dante's Inferno gets a bad rap because I think Dante's Inferno is a very underrated, good actual entry.
Godfather, Bond, Simpsons, dead space, entrepreneurial, were all built on the tech platform that we built at the
Okay.
So some of my code in all of those is really banal, like staging code, but
Hey,
my God,
but for the want of a horseshoe down. That's really cool. So there's a lot of EA anecdotes here. See, so I'm sitting here talking about EA buying these phones on the bar. I'm just talking legality.
So in the last week at clubs in my class, I've been asked about EA, right?
A little loot box. How do you feel about Reddit, Austin?
Reddit?
All right, guys.
No, it's 'cause
We are live.
They got that ridiculous pose. Pretty much. Yes.
I got it.
You can't see us.
Well, can you guys see me?
We can.
see your
We're all
desktop.
set.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm super glad to be here. So this talk is called How to Use Instagram to Build Hype and Sell More Copies of Your Indie Game. Okay, so prior to talking, who am I? Okay, so I'm a marketer and a game designer. I've been doing marketing for the past 5 years, mostly internet marketing, social media, and I grew my social media following to over 722,000 followers. And I'm also a game designer with roughly 12 years experience designing gameplay systems. And I created Sanctuary RPG and Overture and many more unfinished prototypes. Okay. So to give a little bit of background, 2012 I created Sanctuary RPG, the world's first Gatsby game on Steam. 2013 I co-founded a bunch of media with my co-founder Raga. In 2014 I started helping indie game developers with marketing, social media, and PR. 2016 I published over 65 PC games. And 2017 we just shipped over 2.1 million copies on Steam. Cool. So like enough about me. Why Instagram, right? So Instagram right now is actually more popular than Twitter, which is pretty surprising. Because Twitter, kind of dominated the space for so long. But these days, I believe this is as of April this year. Instagram has over 700 million monthly active users versus Twitter's paltry 300 million. And each time you post on Instagram, it actually gets on average 60 times more average engagement per post than on Facebook, which is pretty crazy. Because almost everyone uses Facebook. And what this means is you get more eyes on your game with less effort spent, which is what we all want here. It's all about optimizing. And the myths. So like some popular myths is that Instagram is just for teenagers, or just for food pictures, or just for selfies. That is not the case. Posting on Instagram also does not take so much time and effort. And I mean, like, so there's a lot of people who use Instagram these days, and there's a lot of gamers on there also. And so like at first it might take you maybe a few minutes to make a post or your very first post, but after a while, once you get used to it, it honestly takes me maybe 10 to 15 seconds to make a new post. Okay, so the reality is that having a strong Instagram strategy allows you to gain brand awareness and drive a ton of traffic to your profile and to your indie game. And it kind of adds like another touch point to turn onlookers into fans, and then onto customers. So like for example, if you're working on, let's say, like a roguelike game, and you have a friend who's also working on their roguelike game, just by being on Instagram, you're better at like attracting new users than them, because you're adding just one more touch point than your closest competitors. Okay, so why should you use it? Well, it's super simple. There's actually less noise than other social media platforms such as Twitter and Facebook, because it's only built to do one thing, and that is to share awesome images. And there's no pop-ups, no links in every post. So like a lot of people use Twitter, and they're kind of put off by the fact that there's a lot of people leaking out, stuff like that. And then on Facebook, you have to contend with Facebook Messenger, pop-ups, chatbots kind of popping up, Facebook desktop notifications, and so yeah, on Instagram, almost everything feels super streamlined and super organic. Okay, next, it's visual. So people love visual content, and so like accounts that do well on Instagram are eye-catching and pleasing, and content on Instagram is actually tailored towards each user's personal preferences. So like for example, if you're making a roguelike game and it gets a lot of attention from other gamers, then like other people are much more likely to be exposed to the content naturally, and it's because the Instagram algorithm kind of detects what people like and will naturally show them more of what they like. And yeah, it's mobile. So like most people keep their phones nearby at all times. People will browse Instagram while they're waiting in line, stuff like that. And yeah, it has an awesome user interface and it's super addicting. So people who actually use Instagram will always use Instagram. And I think the statistic is that more than half of people aged like 11 to like 35 are on Instagram, which is quite a lot of people. Okay, so like how do you set up for success on Instagram? So first you have to choose a great username. Your username should be easily searchable and recognizable. So if you want to promote your personal brand, choose your first and last name. Obviously, if you want to promote your game, just like try to find like a way to express your game's name into your handle. If your game's too long, you can kind of try to concatenate it and let's see. If you want to promote your game studio, you can get it too. And if you have a Twitter account already set up, then you can just use the same handle. And last but not least, don't use numbers. They make it hard for people to find you. So, yeah. Next, you need to set up your bio the right way. So you need to create an eye-catching professional profile picture. If it's your personal brand, try to get a professional headshot. If it's your game, try to try to have like an awesome logo or like some awesome looking screenshot of your game. And when it comes to your bio, use industry keywords that help people figure out exactly what you're offering right off the bat. So if you're making like a roguelike game, make sure to use the word roguelike and the word game, and if it's for PC, use the word PC. And yeah, and then finally, you need like a clear and strong call to action, because on Instagram, you really can't link out when you post things. You can only drive people to your profile, and then from your profile, it'll link out to your bio link. So it's important to have like a clear call to action. Okay, so yeah, so first you start off with a high resolution profile picture, and then you have a clear "Who am I" section. So if it's you, put what you are. If it's your game, make sure to list the main selling points, the main USPs. And then yeah, so always have like a super clear value proposition as to why someone will follow you or would want to follow you. So personally, I post a lot of humor, so I have follow me for daily humor on there. Let's see, and then next, yeah, so it's all about having that clear call to action to the bio link. Personally, it's tap the link below to learn more about me. And if it's about your game, tap the link below to, try the early alpha version of my game. Tap the link below for your chance to win a free copy of my game. Tap the link below for something. Okay, next. So it's all about posting fantastic visuals. So choose words that describe your game or skill, and then post like screenshots, just videos, stuff like that like align with those message. That message. So so if you have an action game, post screenshots, post GIFs, post videos, and like it's perfectly fine to actually post things that aren't your game also, if it aligns with the words that like are like represent your core brand. And don't post any blurry images or photos. Use HD dimensions whenever possible. Okay, next, encourage engagement. Provide more insight and value with the body of each post. So don't just post your screenshot or GIF and just leave it as is. Make sure to caption with something relevant. Consider asking a question to like spark discussion. So like ask the audience, what they think of the current GIF, what their thoughts are, and honestly ask yourself if your post is like either funny or informative or motivational. If it's not one of those things, don't post it. Let's see. And the next, it's important to use the explore button to discover new people that you might like to follow. And so it's all about following your competitors' followers. And people will usually follow you back if your content is awesome enough. And the more you interact with others, the more they'll return the favor. So feel free to like other people's posts, comment on other people's posts if you feel like it, and basically just engage with other people that are in your target demographic of people who might play your game. And yeah, next is powered hashtags. So use hashtags that are popular with your target audience, and use 30 hashtags in every post, and have a mix of healthy, or have a healthy mix of popular and niche hashtags. So popular hashtags are hashtags that are over 500,000 uses, and then niche hashtags are ones that are probably hovering around like 100,000 or less. And it's important to leave the hashtags as a comment below your post. And then, so it's all about cross promotion, right? You need to promote your Instagram account to your existing audience. So if you have like a mailing list, if you have other social media profiles, it's important to let people know that you're on Instagram now, so that they can follow you and like your posts. And it's important to keep some content exclusive to Instagram also. For example, if someone were kind of like on the fence about following you, if they know that something's awesome, or like if they know something's awesome is coming up, and it's only on Instagram, then they'll more than likely follow your account. And yeah. And then next, how to rapidly grow. So the easiest way to rapidly grow is to collaborate with other people. So like reach out to like similar companies and see if they like to collaborate with you on a giveaway or promotion. Exchange shout outs with similar audiences, and make sure that the audience sizes are kind of similar. So like for example, let's say that you are making a roguelike game and you want to partner up with someone. Try to partner up with like another game developer with like similar game and with a similar audience count, and then just like ask them, like say, hey, do you want to partner up with me? I can give you a shout out for your game in exchange for a free shouting out my game. Next, hosting giveaways and promotions. So offer a prize that your potential audience would be delighted to receive. So it's important to give them something that's relevant. And so like when you do that, ask people to like the post and tag their friends. It's a good way to build buzz. It's a good way to get their friends to know about your game, and it's a good way to build goodwill in the community because people love giveaways, people love promotions, and so like some potential ideas for prizes are, if you're launching like a Steam game then you could use a Steam gift card. If your game is looking really good and it's in early alpha, you could actually give away like access to your early alpha, stuff like that. Next, take advantage of messaging. So reach out to thought leaders and influencers and offer them pure value. Don't DM too many people. Don't use an autoresponder. And always try to reply to people who message you. This will make it more likely for your post to show up in their feed. And yeah, so it's all about generally like interacting with people on social, and basically reaching out to people with like a lot of followers and trying to offer them value. Because people with like a lot of followers, they kind of get spammed a lot with people who are asking for shoutouts or people who are asking for favors, and yeah, so you kind of want to build that relationship with them in a genuine way by actually not asking them for favors. I mean, you can ask for like favors later on, but it's important to not do it right off the bat. Okay. And then next, give out freebies regularly. So people always love free things. And it's always important to ask for the email address when you do this, because so a lot of game developers make this crucial mistake of having people play their game so that, but they don't actually get their email address. So there's no way for them to actually talk to their players. And so yeah, so it's all about growing that list, and like genuinely interact with them, and growing it and giving them pure value. So yeah. And the next, keep up the momentum. So post between 2 to 4 posts a day, keep consistent. I personally post somewhere around 2 to 3 posts every day. I post once when I wake up, once like noontime, and once around dinner time. And yeah, and so it's all about keeping your posts engagement high by asking questions or telling people to like take action. So like leave a comment below, or what do you guys think, or stuff like that. The worst thing that you can do is to like post something without context. So it's also important to make sure that your posts add value, and your posts kind of prime people to actually ask questions or leave a comment. Alright, let's go on to the advanced strategies. So like a good engagement tip is to have friends engage with your posts right after you post it, and it may lead to more engagement in the long run. And then asking questions with the replies good ways as well. And upgrade to a free business profile to track your analytics. You definitely want to always be trending up, and if you're trending down, then you're doing something wrong. So it's always good to measure and iterate every week, and try to get people to engage with your post right after you post it. More YouTube tips. Yeah, so add text in your photos as a call to action, and encourage people to click on the link in your bio. So like it's not enough to just post like GIFs and screenshots here and there. You want to also post text posts, which are basically so like you can start with a blank canvas, and then on top of that you can put some text on it. I personally use this program called Typorama, and it's pretty cool. It kind of like allows you to overlay text on top of a blank canvas to have a call to action. So like for example, if I'm launching like a new version of my game, I can use that app to create like a little image that says, hey, version 0.02 has just been released, and so it's a good way to keep your followers engaged with the development of your game. And yeah, it's perfectly fine to post the same content over and over again, just as long as you leave like a month or two between each post. And so if you really wanted to, you can actually just have content for just a month, and then just like recycle that content over and over again to drive that traffic and engagement without having to like always be constantly making new and more content. And yeah, so it's all about using the 80-20 rule to monitor your posts and post the best ones. So like for example, one experiment that you do would be to post 10 posts and then figure out which posts are doing the best, which posts are doing horrible, and then only reposting 1 month later the best posts. And even more engagement tips. Use a custom URL to make the link in your bio more contextual, so your audience is more likely to click on it. The worst thing that you can do is just drop like a link that has no context. So like I've seen tinyurl.com/hgytbr or something like that, and that doesn't really give the person looking at the link much confidence. So it's all about making sure that your URL has context to it. So like for example, mine right now is download.net/about. So it's pretty obvious that if you click on that link, it's going to lead to my page where you can learn more about me. Let's see. And then also, you need to make a habit of going through your posts and like replying to comments as much as possible. And yeah, so it's all about experimenting and doubling down on what works to drive the most traction for you personally. And then so here's the final engagement tip. You need to take advantage of opportunities to like interact with accounts larger than yours to boost your visibility. And so what this does is that it kind of tricks the algorithm to thinking that, oh wow, like this page might be big. And so like what you can do is you can actually take your phone out right now and take a photo of this from your seat. And then you can post it on Instagram later and tag me, Doan.Daniel, and I will kind of quote unquote bless your account by liking your photo. And yeah, so this kind of tricks the algorithm to thinking that this is like an up and coming account, and that more attention should be paid to it from other accounts. And yeah, so I will go ahead and end on that note. Instagram is super underrated right now, and I personally feel like it's gonna explode within the next year or two, and so like a lot of indie game developers totally ignore it right now, and they're mostly just messing around on Twitter and then trying to do Facebook. But personally, I would double down on Instagram like super hard right now. And yeah, that concludes my talk.
Let's see if he'll pick up. All right. I'm gonna give you guys some tips. You want to swap off computers?
I guess that's it. Did you just screen?
Pretty hashtag seems like a lot of hashtags. So I was like, that's pretty work. Describe anything.
Yeah. That's 30 minutes to go. Yeah, I guess I don't keep Discord, but
So guys, yes, I've got a kind of homework assignment for you. It's ironic that he's. No, I'm all good. It's ironic that he was talking about Instagram, but I follow Daniel on Facebook, and we're also part of the indie dev community on Facebook. There are something like 150,000 people in the indie dev community. You got to check out his posts. I mean, he posts daily, and it is clearly the way that he's suggested doing it. He always starts off with something that is clickbait. The terrible mistake that I made, the thing that I'll never do again. I felt so embarrassed. I mean, something along those lines. He doesn't quite end with, "You'd never believe what happened next." I think BuzzFeed's got that copyrighted. But he really does these really good engrossing posts. The other part is that he's really active about it. If you post a response back, he'll open up a conversation. Reason that he does it, he is really doing marketing for other small game companies, but the other part is that he's got this network of literally thousands of junior game developers, all of whom want to get his blessing on something because of the size of his audience, but who in return repost his stuff, which generates even more enthusiasm. So it's an interesting. I really suggest that you belong to those communities. I'm old, so I don't do Instagram. And I haven't seen the value yet, but maybe Daniel will teach it to me. But I'm certainly very active on Facebook. Post frequently on Twitter, both for myself and for my company. The other thing that I do is I have multiple accounts. I mean, it's not like 60 of them, but I will retweet the stuff that I posted individually on my Night Dive account, etc. and so forth. So, but there's some really good ways of building synergy in that. And Daniel is, it can't be, nobody can be that good at being that deceptive. It's not for that purpose. He will really help you. If you ask a sincere question, not so much development oriented, but marketing oriented, I've done this in Steam, I'm having this issue, or what were you suggesting this, he will engage in conversation with you. And by building up that network, he's got a lot more strength, he's got a lot more size to the community. You look like you're good.
Didn't it? Windows 10 after all, right?
Hey, you're doing better on it than I did.
At least it's not Vista.
XP64.
ME.
All right, while we're waiting for Nathan to set up, I got a question for you. Windows ME. What did ME stand for?
Millennium Edition.
Why was it called Millennium Edition?
2000. And it wasn't Windows 2000.
Because, well, ME came out at the same time as 2000, right? The reason that both of them were done is that ME was an upgrade from 98, which was not Y2K compliant. Who would have thought that they'd have 4 numbers in a year? I mean, who could have anticipated something like that? Just saying.
Bits are expensive.
Another piece of trivia, why is there no Windows 9?
Because it would interfere with, people would confuse it with the 95, 98 series.
There's actually a kernel code that still has Windows 9 star. That tries to detect 95, 98. So Windows 9.
The Germans wouldn't buy it.
What's that?
The Germans wouldn't buy it.
Gotta always be thinking that international marketing.
They have to pay Rammstein for advertising.
There is an apocryphal story. I don't know if it's really true that there was a newscaster in this area out of Detroit whose first name was Mort. That didn't go very well in the French-speaking countries. So
I can see that.
You got it. You want me to do an intro? Or are you ready to go? All right, guys. Nathan's going to speak. Nathan is the CEO and founder of VectorRock, president, right? VectorRock and computer security company. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is secure games.
Yeah, thanks. So I have all of maybe 80-something followers on Twitter. So definitely not your marketing guy. You need something blowing up though? Call me. All right. So the funny thing about this is that Larry asked me for what I'm going to talk about, like a slide and a topic, like a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I have no idea. All good talks are put together in the last 72 hours. So yeah, just this. We're going to talk about hacking games directly. So let's see. How do I want to start this? So I guess. Who am I? I kind of put this, use this kind of intro theme for kind of more professionals. So I'll get into kind of some of the non-professional stuff after I get through this first part. But yeah, that's me. It's actually the same thing I used when I on my visa trying to get into India. They let me in, no problem. I guess I didn't look too creepy. So, I've been in the security industry for about 20 years. Maybe officially, like legally, maybe 16, something like that. But
It's when you change color of the hats, right?
yeah. It's kind of when I came on the grid, I guess is a better way to put it. So, anybody here heard of the Michigan Cyber Range? Wow. All right, you guys definitely aren't in security at all. Okay. All right. So, how about merit? Okay. How many people go to college? Yeah. All right. So, okay. Yeah. So, merit is actually the ISP for pretty much every university in Michigan. They've got about 4,500 miles of fiber optics that they run. It's pretty sweet. I went to Western. I didn't even know about them until I started kind of working with them. So about 5 years ago, inside Merit, we started something called the Michigan Cyber Range. And best way to kind of explain it is it's kind of like a place you can go to learn about hacking stuff and also defending stuff as well. So we create a lot of big environments for force exercises. Try to teach people how to hack and stuff like that. So that was about 5 years ago. Well, a year ago, I went back to my roots and I started a company called Vector Rock, and we do a lot of pen testing and pretty much everything security related that Merit and the Michigan Cyber Range won't do. So I've got a team, we just go in and we help startups figure out, all right, they got new products coming to market, you know, is it secure, is it safe? You know, I'm sure you probably run into this even with the games where people want to know, is your stuff safe, secure? Because I mean, nowadays things are getting hacked left and right. People losing IP, all that kind of stuff. So try to help them out, do a lot of research and all that kind of stuff. So, also military training, this stuff's kind of cool. I had the fortune of actually working a lot of some of these foreign states, a lot of our National Guard, just teaching them how to do security stuff. So I don't know, not that exciting as far as I'm explaining it, but it's kind of cool to get to travel the world on it. You guys haven't heard of Michigan Cyber Range, probably haven't heard of Cyber Shield. Anybody here heard of that?
I haven't either.
No, haven't either? Okay, all right. So it's something where one person in the room. That's kind of cool. All right. So gist of it is that every year the U.S. National Guard gets together at one location and they get all their cyber experts together and they basically do war games. So you got the blue team guys that are defending, and then you got one room that's got about 100, maybe 150 red team attacker guys. And they basically try to teach the blue guys how to find them and how to stop them, so we can keep our nation safe in bad times. So yeah.
Well, what's the worst that happens if we get hacked? We could end up with some guy president then.
You know, the sad thing is that's not the worst. So yeah. Oh, all right. Funny anecdote about that. It's a joke when it comes to our infrastructure, how insecure we are. It's actually safer to be in like a third world country where some guy's got to run out to a shed to turn the wheel to turn the water off than it is here in our country. And we're like so dependent on electricity, just on time, with delivery and stuff. It's kind of a joke. But anyways, yeah, the worst case, they were saying that, actually this is kind of related to EMP stuff, so I'm kind of going a little bit, I'll come back. So the idea is that with EMP attacks, they were saying that if something happened to our grid, it would take about 50 years to bring everything back online. And here's the reason why. You got a substation, right? You got big old equipment there, you know, these big transformers and whatever. They don't keep those around. So if you don't have any, you go manufacture them. But if you've got no power, how do you run machinery? How do you manufacture it? So what they have to do is have them made overseas, then transport them to the States, figure out how the heck they're going to get them to the location, and then set them up. But how do you offload them off your ship if you don't have power? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just pretty ridiculous. So that applies to like an EMP attack, but imagine you can still do probably some pretty sick damage, you know, even on the cyber realm. So back to this. So it's kind of cool because I get to work with these guys, teaching them how to do the attacks on the red team side. So keeps me on my toes. It's a lot of fun. So Alphaville. All right. So this kind of pulls into some of your guys' realm. It's probably the best screenshot I had on hand, but we got this virtual world, about 150 virtual machines right now, and that's kind of the main battlefield, should we say, for when we do the force-on-force exercises. We kind of started from a conceptual standpoint of who's here has taken some kind of computer class where they had to connect two virtual machines together, done something back and forth, right? Pretty boring stuff, right? Connect machine A to B, connect to this port, do whatever. It's not realistic at all, right? try to imagine doing that when you're trying to teach somebody like a class on cybersecurity. I mean, it doesn't click. So when we were putting AlphaVille together, we said, all right, let's start from the concept standpoint and say, all right, let's make this as realistic as possible. So we started out probably similar to what you guys do. We storyboarded and said, all right, what does this city got in it? You know, create entities, you know, like at school. All right, what's the school going to look like inside? And then from there, we built the network topology and then created the systems inside of it. So we try to keep this kind of storyboard mentality. Gaming development is not my wheelhouse, so that's why it's kind of cool for me as I'm chatting with you guys, kind of making some of these connections, but I'm guessing you guys are probably jiving with me on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So we built all the systems, put them together. The systems, let's say the school, it's got a real website in it. You can go through it, parse through data. It's fully functional. It's a school, so it really doesn't have good security. It's just got like a Windows 2003 domain controller. Easy stuff to break into. Anyways, so we realized as we were going through this and started adding things like hacking power grids, hacking water plants, that we had no way to really visually represent that very well. So for the hacker, you know, how does he know it's been successful? From the person who's watching the engagement, how do you know they're legitimately saying that a hack has happened? So we said, all right, let's create a 3D world and then emulate all the stuff that happens inside of it. So what you're seeing is actually a screenshot of part of the massive world we've got going on. We've got like a car AI that runs around driving automated, and we've got some stoplights and other systems in there. So if hackers go in and turn off the power grid, everything was dark, right? But sort of the street lights go off, and cars start crashing into each other, exploding, all that kind of fun stuff. So that's showing AlphaVille is. Lastly, kind of cool. I had the opportunity to work with pretty big companies. Hold these certifications. Means probably nothing to you guys. CISSP, security professional, ethical hacker, reverse engineer malware, and writing malware exploit stuff. So I'm not sure if this is good or bad. I get to talk about diplomat, politicians, and generals. And in my hobbies, I invent and hack everything within sight. So on the flip side, I've been a pretty hardcore gamer most of my life. One of those guys that basically starts playing games and all else goes out the window, and then I find myself like with more money than I know what to do with in the game, and I'm going, what the hell am I doing in this game? I should be doing this in the real world. So that's kind of what keeps me from like going backing into gaming, but I've got a pretty strong history in that regard. So I'm going to try to make a lot of analogies based on some of my context when we start talking about hacking gaming or hacking games. So with no further ado, why would somebody want to hack your game? And why should you really care about that? So I guess, you know, when we first want to start here. I know, that was a great guy. So we first start here, we want to look at what motives does a hacker have for playing or messing with your game? First one we can say is, they might want to look at it from the standpoint of, can I get an economic edge in the real world playing with the economics of your game? So gold farming, gold miners, right? People will go in, rack up all the cash, and then they'll go out and then sell that in the real world and do translations like that. So there's like this economic edge that they figure by taking or exploiting your game, they can prosper in like the real world. Second, bragging rights. You know, those annoying people that basically have those auto-aim things and just, they don't have to do anything, it's popping people off. Third, boredom. Just got nothing better to do with their time, like those guys in Russia. So. Power tripping, right? You know, the whole concept of I have certain power over you that I probably wouldn't have in the real world. The motive? Yeah. All right. So I like this one. This is pretty good. They might have real world enemies. So imagine, all right, who's here familiar with EVE Online? Pretty long-standing game, right? I mean, it's been around for, what, I think it came out in like 2003. So it's like, what, about 15 years worth of history there? So imagine someone's put like 15 years worth of effort into a game like that. And for example, that game is, what, it's time-based with their skills. So it's not like you can really speed or accelerate through that. It's real-world time that's going through that. So imagine you going in, you know this guy in real life, and you're really pissed at him. Well, if you can circumvent or get into his account, you know, that's kind of what they're thinking about. How can I go at this person? Now, you're kind of thinking, why am I saying this? And what is this relevance to you? But what will perceive this is that if that happens or people are able to start doing that, your game's kind of losing value, right? I mean, you're in a way trying to protect your own community. So that's why I'm kind of pointing out some of these things which seem kind of nebulous and whatnot. So And then you got those people that are cheap and really don't want to pay for your game, and they'll just kind of copy it or whatever. No joke with the DA and peer. Yeah, alright, well, I didn't want to put like too obvious. Alright, anyways. Alright, and then you got the people stealing code base, trying to clone your game, make those easy clones. With World of Warcraft, I remember after a while, someone came out with those free versions, and you saw all those sub-worlds kind of popping up. So that's something you got to consider that people are going to want to try to do. And of course, curiosity. You know, hackers really aren't bad. It's like an ethic thing, right? So a hacker is somebody basically says, all right, how does this thing work? Let me understand and explore. It's when they understand how that works, if they choose to then use it for benefiting others or benefiting themselves, right? So types of hacks. I try to break this down into what we call kind of like two different categories here. What I call in-band, and then we got out-of-band. And the best way to just differentiate this is that in-band is when you're modifying the game environment directly. Well, a good example would be modifying the player's in-game resources without using the interface. So you're going in, it's like you're accessing the system through ways that it was never really intended. And then out-of-band would be trying to modify the world outside the game environment itself. And this is what we kind of call like a macro, for example, saying you're on the system boot, it's going to auto start your program and then log in. So if that makes sense as far as like these differentiators at a high level? Okay, cool. All right, so first, in-band. We can kind of define that as, or one example of this would be sending or modifying data being sent to the remote server. So, anybody recognize it? Yeah. Dude, I couldn't believe this. The other day at the office, they're like, what is this? I'm like, are you serious? Like, this has been around forever. All right. So, all right, I like to use this as a good example. It's fun. You know, I've got this running joke at the office with, like, you know, unicorns, something like rainbow unicorns, and people are like, what the hell is he talking about? All right. So, I like to use this example of like browser-based games where you've got something, the game's entirely encapsulated in the browser, it's running right there, it's loaded in real time, there's nothing stored locally, but you've got on the remote side, you've got some kind of server that stores all the high scores. So, an example of what we're talking about with data being sent back and forth would be that maybe you played a game and you got a score of 6. Well, that sucks. You're not going to make the high score. So what you do is in transit, that data going back to the server, you just change your score to 6 million, and then it gets sent to the server, and next thing you know, you got a score of 6 million. Well, right, who's going to want to play your game if they can't beat the 6 million and there's this concept of people going in and modifying it, right? That kind of sucks. So the concept with this is you can manipulate anything in that regard. If you can get that stream going back and forth, you can change any kind of content.
So you intercept your packets, or how are you modifying?
Well, so you see, how do you do that? Okay, so a good example of how you can do that, well, there's a couple ways. So there's...
And I'm going to start taking notes.
Yeah, and by the way, any information I share here, happy to chat with you guys further afterwards. I guarantee you're going to be like, I think, after we're done here. So, yeah, there's a lot of programs that you can use that will allow you to watch data as it's streaming in real time, going back and forth. There's sometimes where you can use debuggers in a browser itself to then modify variables, inject code, so you're getting inside the browser itself. You know. Cool. So there's some program I like called Burp Suite, which will grab packets in real time. And if you want to get really crazy, that's what I'll use. Let's say I'm going after like WoW or something. I'll run Burp Suite up in the background. I use random games for a lot of reasons. Anyways. So you've got WoW that you start up after you've got Burp Suite up and running, and then you log in, you do some stuff, run some commands, fire some skills or whatever, and then log out. Well, if I know what the timestamps of when I did those skills, I can look in the log, or Burp Suite, and then, sorry, I said Burp Suite, I'm not Wireshark. Yeah, there's so many damn tools. All right, so Wireshark, we got Wireshark up and running. Now, it does a packet capture of the entire session, so I can see every single thing that happened on my computer system as it's traversing across the network while that program is running. That also includes things like, you know, your system checking for Windows updates or whatever. So you got to kind of filter through that. But if you look for the traffic session that happened between the game client and server, and then I can start, if I can see the traffic inside, I'll start looking and say, oh, what was sent back and forth? And now that gives me an idea of, oh, what can I maybe modify and tweak and all kinds of stuff. So, what do you guys think is a defense for something like this?
Never trust the client on anything.
Yeah, that's true. Never trust the client on anything. What else?
Be sure to encode every single packet in non-plain text.
Yeah, I like that.
Sanitize your inputs.
Let's see. What was it? There we go. Encrypt all the things. That's the easiest thing to do. Especially with like browser-based games, and it's pretty straightforward because when nowadays using SSL, TLS, all that kind of stuff for going to secure sites, it's the easiest thing. You don't have to do too much, and a lot of times, I think most gaming platforms, depending on whatever you're using for development, has those kind of things like SSL, TLS, all that kind of stuff built into it, so you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. You can add those packages in, but it's kind of important because I think a lot of times when you're in development mode, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I do a lot of development and coding as well. When you're building stuff, you're thinking, I got to get to over here to my goal, right? You're not thinking, well, how do I secure it or what along the way? You're like, how do I get to my end goal? Not that I'm thinking, how do I make it secure at the same time? So I mention this because if you're not thinking about this early, it'll hurt you later. So next, is encrypting everything foolproof? Yeah.
No.
All right, so the next example we got here. Binary modification. So the best example, the oldest school one that I can think of, is the no CD hacks. If you can't read that, it says, I might not have a mirror, but at least I can still see these cars coming. And it's got like a CD on the side of it. So somebody get a projector, so this stuff's a little hard to see. All right, so the no CD hacks. Well, what they would do is, a lot of times, is they take the binary that starts up for the program and actually change the bits inside of it and jump over or loop over areas in the code where it says to actually check for if there's a CD in the drive, all that kind of stuff. So we're actually talking about changing the files themselves in your system or your application once it's
So
launched.
hold on for a second, because these are digital kids. At least some of them are. Back a million years ago, when you bought games on discs, so you had to buy the disc, you bought the disc home, and you put the game in, and you installed it, and you got to play. Pretty cool. When you got done with your session, you took the disc out, and the next time you went to play, it said you got to put the disc in. You couldn't play the game without the disc being in, even though the game was installed on your hard drive. Okay? It was checking to see that the CD was in there. And some of the protections that they used, do you guys know the story? Is this legendary about Stardock and Starforce?
I'm unfamiliar with it.
It's a long story, but there was a Russian company called Starforce that was really, really obsessed. They were doing the anti-hack protection for a number of games. One of the things that they would do is to check if you had daemon tools, which enabled you to play the game using an image of the disc. Well, if they detected that, they would just basically blow up your system. Starforce was responsible for CD drives, literally the physical CD drive breaking. Okay, I mean these were like really evil people. The thing was that CDs scratched because they were CDs, they were physical media, right? Your kid played with them, right? So there began to be this whole thing of these small hacks that went around, that circumvented the CD check, called no CD. When you go back and you look at how piracy got started and how it became mainstream, this is how it became mainstream. A lot of what happened in computer security and computer insecurity came from people trying to make sure that you had one copy of each thing for each device you were using. For example, Sony BMG put a rootkit on millions of computers to make sure you didn't do something terrible like rip music from a CD onto your hard drive. They wanted you to have one CD for your car and one CD for your computer. And there's a lawyer out right now. I'm not picking on you, but there's a lawyer out who said that the ultimate example of piracy are those places that don't require you to buy books. What do you call those things? Libraries. But what you were referencing, the no CD hack, it created. There's almost a linear there's almost a straight line between people saying, I scratched my CD, but I own the game, I want to play it, and going out and getting that thing, and the Pirate Bay. I mean, it's almost like it's because you open up Pandora's door. When people found, well, gee, in order to play this game that I own legitimately, if I have to go and download this pirate thing, then heck, I might as well go one step further and not buy the game and just download the whole.
Why not get a few more ISOs?
So there we go.
So I think we had a question real quick.
Yeah, it was just commenting on if you're messing with just CD drive, you then can go the next step further of getting virtual drives and messing with the ISO to just
right. And that's a very good point because truthfully, there are useful or legitimate purposes for using virtual drives, like legitimately. So yeah, it really did open up an interesting can of worms. But the point of bringing that up was to say that a lot of times people will just modify your program itself to get past a lot of these checks and balances that you've set in to try to validate that that your game is legitimate, and you're bypassing or changing values inside of it. A good example of this is we see a lot of this come out of communities where you start seeing the things like the file mods for skins, stats patching, all that kind of stuff. That has its roots in coming back and actually changing the binaries themselves. Going into folder systems, overwriting these things. That's where the genesis of a lot of this comes at. DLL injection, this is a lot more of like an advanced type thing. It's more of like a Windows type thing where it's how when the program starts up, it looks for libraries, linked libraries in your system to run the application. And the way Windows works, it does set some kind of a priority thing. So they add a DLL or override a DLL so that they can then start injecting their own custom code inside of your system that you've built. So, all right, so continuing on here, binary modification, DLL injection countermeasures. So there's this concept of embedded local checksum computation. So all right, so the gist of it is that there's something called checksum, or doing a hash, to make sure that a file hasn't been tampered with. And the gist of it is when your program starts up, it looks at some kind of checksum to verify itself that all the files are correct and haven't been modified. There's another way that you can do it where it kind of does a call home. So at startup, instead of inside itself just checking, it'll call home and say, hey, what do I need to do to validate that I am legitimate locally? The idea of this is to bypass any local variables that basically says the hash should look like this because the hacker can,
So what game companies can you name offhand that force you to be online to play a game?
Ubisoft, Blizzard,
Valve.
Well, I would probably put EA and Valve at least attempts to say.
So I'm going to get into that, so I don't want to just spoil the
spoilers.
Yeah. All right. So the next method is what you kind of call the downloadable content systems, right? Where a good example would be like Steam. And what's nice about the way that Steam does it and some of these entities is it starts up from inside Steam, so it starts like a wrapper. So the idea is you don't yourself have to add all these security protections to make sure your program is itself. The Steam kind of acts like the outside wrapper and try to make sure it's safe, and then all the content loads inside, and there's kind of like that. It acts like that buffer or barrier for protections is the best way to put it. So we kind of see it as, well, all right, is Steam trying to take over the entire market? Yeah, okay, but from a developer standpoint, in a way, they're actually going that extra step to protect your content from getting ripped off, to make sure it's easily deployed, all that kind of stuff. So then you get into something called client memory overriding. Best example would be location hacking. Another one would be skill cooldowns. Loop randomizers, and I really hope you're not doing that kind of thing in memory. So locally, so that'd be, all right, you open up a chest, you're rolling dice, right? So 0 to 100, and then whatever your number is, and then obviously the people in the party that have the highest number, they win the loot. Imagine if that's locally happening on the client and not in the server. I'm going to roll 100 every single time something comes up that I want, right? So that's obviously not something you want to do. Skill cooldowns, I was actually surprised by that, but not at the same time. All right, so a good example of this would be, let's say you've got a skill cooldown that takes 15 minutes. Well, you fire that once, and then, I don't know, you finish your quest. Well, if it's local, If you stop the program and start it back up again, your global cooldown just reset. There's no persistency in that, right? So that's kind of a problem if you're trying to maintain that. What if you're in some kind of like big mass battle and there's lots of stuff going on, but all you have to do is log out, come back in, and you just reset your global cooldowns for these uber ultra skills. So countermeasures for this kind of thing? Yes, there is. Server-side validation. So instead of the client actually doing that generating, you can treat it like the trigger fires. So let's say on the server, you've got the randomizers always going, right? But every time a request comes in from a user, it then picks something out of that pool. So instead of it generating on the client, it's more of like, hey, I'm at 2 p.m. and 00 nanoseconds. It says, give me a number, and then it fires back. So it's never happening locally on the client. It's like the server kind of maintains that integrity. So that's what we're talking about, doing things server side. Another way would be you fire off your ultra skill. It would store the timestamp that you last fired it off on the server instead of the client. So next time you try to fire it off again, it's going to check on the server to make sure you're within that. If you're within that window, it doesn't fire off. Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. So server side is everything. What do you think?
No.
Final form of defense? Yeah. You. All right, so some analogies that come into play with this. Now, I'm not saying it's not helpful at all, but there's some considerations you got to think about when you're doing this. So first would be like server load. If we said we're going to store every single player's global cooldown times on the server, that basically means for every skill we're going to store the information for, we got to have a record for it in a database for all the active users. And that might not be bad if you've got maybe 100 users playing in your game, but how does it scale for 20,000, 200,000 people that are all simultaneously logged in? Just considerations that you have to keep in mind, because you got to sort through records and do all kind of maybe some crazy database type stuff. Also, client lag. If you've got to do a check every single time a skill fires, or if you have to do some kind of synchronization, that's something you got to consider. That whatever time it takes to do those checks, it can slow things down, right? Next thing for out of band is macro scripting. All right, so can anybody name that game?
Not from here.
I know, I was trying to get the projector so it was so much bigger.
Oh, is that even online?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is like one of the biggest battles that actually took place at the time. It had like 4,000 people all simultaneously, like in one solar system, like or one location, all fighting each other. It was like this epic battle that went on for like I think like a day or something like that. Pretty awesome stuff. So, anyways, why am I bringing that up? Macro scripting. We can break this down into being kind of like the automated sequences for doing two things: faster than normal human responses. So I don't want to have to skip through all these different things. I just hotkey to one, and my macro program fires those off. Second, you can board repetitious commands. So that's kind of where we also get into body, right? So repetitions, boring, and we don't want to do that. It's kind of how we get into that. Also, what I thought was interesting is capture learning. So there was a time where they were actually farming this out, where if you had a captcha pop up, there were places like in Russia or whatever who all they would do is sit there all day, like answering captchas. They get like pennies or whatever for answering these captchas. That's how they were getting money. But then we started getting better with a lot of AI recognition. So they started saying, all right, well, now I'll just have my AI system determine what the captchas are and just input it so you don't even need a human in the loop. So that then cascades forward to games. Now we're getting into cars that can drive themselves. So we're getting to the point where systems can learn and visually see what's in front of them and based on certain parameters respond to that. So a lot of the more advanced bots that you're using macros for are looking for certain patterns, like, okay, I know my window should look like this, or I'm looking for certain patterns. So even if you shift things around and jumble on the screen, the macro is looking, or the program is looking for these certain patterns on the screen to then bypass whatever mechanisms you set up to deter that kind of behavior. Oh yeah, I love one more time. So, all right, so this is where we're getting to observing pattern behaviors, and this is a lot more of the human elements and not automated, but this is the people behind the scenes, or not behind the keyboards actually doing a lot of stuff. What we're looking for is predictability. So there was a time when I didn't actually go to school and I had no motivation, so I just sat at home and played Unreal Tournament Game of the Year nonstop. So bad that I would pretty much get bored if I wasn't playing against the bots in like God mode. And what was really interesting about that, where we're getting into this whole predictability thing, is you start to learn how the programmers designed the AI. So in this case, they had it set up, and then I got into like Unreal Tournament 2004. But in this case, they were doing something where they would try to lead you, so they knew you were on the screen, even though they couldn't see you through the walls, and they knew you were over here traversing at this path, so my bot would fire over here because it would just predict. So based on that, I realized, all right, so I can't run in straight paths. I got to randomly zigzag and shift things around, which is great because then it confused the bots in God mode. So like I wasn't really getting hit. And it's great when you're in a map with like 64 bots and just you, or 63 bots and just you, and things are just blowing up all around you. So, point is that from a predictability standpoint, there are people that will actually go and do that. I can't believe I'm just admitting that I just did that, but all right. But from these observations, we can start looking at game elements that the players will start to use to their advantage that you never intended or meant to be. Examples of this would be mob training, where you go into a zone. And let's say like your MMO, you go into a zone and you start attacking one or two mobs, but then you run away from them, right? I mean, everybody knows mob training, right? I don't have to explain this. Yes, no, I'm getting mixed. All right, so I'll just go. Sorry if you've heard this before. All right, so the gist of it is you go into a zone, you start attacking mobs for farming. You don't kill them, you just get them angry at you, and they start chasing you around. Well, then you get 20 or 30 of these things running around. You'll never really survive them if you get hit, but you're moving faster than they are, and then you run up to another guy that's in the zone farming. You just stop there, die, and then the mobs turn all their anger to that one person and just kill them. So it was never intended, right, for that to work, where you're in a zone and you could actually kill other people by trailing mobs, but they understood how the system worked, and they're using it to terrorize your citizens in your world. Second would be spawn point camping. So what? You've got your world, you've got some super uber boss, it spawns every 12 hours. If that location maybe isn't randomized, or it's at one of two or three locations that will spawn, you have people that will sit there, or you even got farming bots that will sit there waiting for the spawn, kill it before anybody else in the world does. Then they'll take the loot, sell it on the market, turn that into selling the money in the real world. You get it, like the whole economic thing. Additionally from that, we've got, this was fun, tiny avatars in PvP. I'm making another WoW reference. I'm sorry. I haven't played WoW in like 10, 15 years, but it still takes me back to this good example. So there's a time where people were for PvP making all when mages were overpowered in WoW, but they made them as the smallest avatars as possible as the gnomes, so you couldn't actually click on them because their frames would shrink based on the size of their characters, right? So it's like you literally had to tab through to actually find them instead of actually clicking them on screen. So it was just a nightmare trying to kill them. Doing things like harnessing the physics engine with player collision. So anybody ever played Warhammer Online? Oh, okay, let's sell people. All right, man. I'm wondering if I'm using game references that are too old for you guys. Like, you guys didn't see
I know
anything.
the games, I just haven't played them.
Okay, good. All right, good.
I play different ones.
So the one thing I liked about Warhammer Online was that they used player collision. I thought that was so sexy because right now most of the games I see is you run through the other people. Tanks are pointless. What I loved about Warhammer Online was the fact that if you were a tank, actually any player, you couldn't actually run through them in like combat scenarios or situations. So if you had to defend like a tower, you'd literally have like the ramp to go up, but you have the tanks basically as a wall on the front line. Squishies, nobody else could get up until they killed the tanks. Well, that worked out great, but I would use that to my advantage where I would stand up a little while higher, but I didn't even come up. So again, you're using the system. People obviously complain. They changed it. They went out of business. Hey, but not because of the player collision. Not because of the player collision. But I just love how that concept. So if you guys ever come out of the game, you put in player collision. I will play it. I love it.
Unit collision is a huge thing in like Dota 2. You want to block the creeps from moving many times in the game.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Nope, you're not getting any EXP. All the creeps are going to die way over here, and you're...
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys heard about that, but he was using an example of like in Dota 2, when you got the creeps that are going towards the other side. Well, obviously, if the other team kills the creeps, then they get experience, they get gold, and they level up. But if you redirect them, now the other team's not getting gold and experience for killing those creeps. So All right, so more out of band. Mouse jiggler. Yeah, this is actually a thing. So you got two versions of it. You've got an app and an actual piece of hardware that kind of collects in like a dongle. So the idea here is that a lot of times people use this for when your computer goes to sleep or it locks. Well, that's really annoying. Sometimes it's imposed by your university or work, so people will plug in this, what they call like a mouse jiggler, and it's like a randomizer, and it just causes the mouse cursor to twitch ever so slightly, so your system thinks that somebody's at the computer. You can use this against games if you've got a timeout or if the player's idle for X period of time. So I just put my mouse jiggler on there, walk away, and you guys think I'm logged in. So I thought that was pretty ingenious, idea. They've got another version. Well, for apps, you can buy apps, actually even open source apps that will do that in the software. But that's easy to circumvent if you put some open source app thing on your system to check for it. But if it's hardware, it plugs into the USB, your system has no idea. So, another example would be messing with the controller or user input itself. So, kind of like the mouse jiggler stuff, but I like this example. You guys ever heard of like that the whole thing with Morrowind, where you could skill up pretty quickly like a skill? All right. So I'll explain. All right. So the gist of it was that you place your player in a hallway with low ceiling. So this was like remember this was part of the Xbox or Xbox release. So you had your standard Microsoft controller. So you stick your guy in a hallway that's got a low ceiling, and then you stick a heavy object on the jump button and make it stick down, and then you just walk away. Come back in a couple of hours, and your jump skill is now maxed out. Because the idea was the more you use skills or whatever, they would level up. So whether you're using archery or jumping or swimming, the longer you use that skill, the more powerful it gets. So you just stand in the hallway and you're just like jump, 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 jump. And even though you're supposed to be jumping higher every single time, it gets harder to level. Now it's just kind of like hyper skilling up. The irony of that was that you could walk outside, jump so high, you die from falling. Really funny, you're like, oh, this is awesome. You're jumping 3 minutes later, you're like, oh, I'm coming down, and then you die and fall to your death. The idea was the developers had designed it so it would counterbalance. So as you would jump up, your jump skill would increase, but then your acrobatic skill would jump level up as well. So you'd use your own up skill and then down skill. But being in the hallway and just jumping, you're just getting your jump skill and not your fall skill. So that people actually do this to figure out how can they get the skills up, and I think it's kind of fun. So, all right, how am I doing on the side?
Another couple minutes, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Wait, what am I going till?
Till you're done.
Till I'm done. All right. I'm losing track of time. All right, this is fun. All right, so we talked about in-band and out-of-band. So I'm like, what the heck? We can actually merge the two of these together. So use the example of like a wrench key cracker. So if you got a registration key, I like to use, we can use, let's say, well, Windows 7 is a good example, but it's not exactly a video game, but it still works well for our purpose. So if you've got the program or your application that you need to check whether the key is valid or not, there's an algorithm inside it that has to be able to validate every single key it gets. So you might not necessarily have to be online, you might even not have internet access, so the idea is that this algorithm is internally inside your program. What somebody will do is then take your application, reverse engineer it, to then pull out that sequence. Let me back up. Let's see how to do this. So you start your program, and it starts loading all the stuff into memory and all that. Then it gets to a part that says, I need to check if I validated or not, if we've got a legitimate key. If it says no, then it goes to the sub-program and says, okay, I need a key, please enter one for the user, right? So then the user says type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then after that, then it goes into another function that tries to validate that to see, is this a legitimate key or not? And then it does its programming, blah, 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 blah. If it's not legit, it says, dude, you give me the wrong key, I need a new one. Or it says, okay, we're good, let's go back to the main program and start our game. What a hacker will do is they'll go through and look at the assembly code and all the functions inside there, look for this function that says, all right, we got to check the key, and then they'll rip that out. And then they'll say, all right, now we know where all the valid keys are, so I can reverse this and say whatever I'm using to check keys, I can then use that and say, let's generate keys with it. So that's what we're talking about in-band and out-of-band, because we're going in and we're ripping stuff out to then use later in that regard. To reverse engineer, pull out that function to a validation, and then we create a key that the application thinks is okay. So once we pull that out and think we're making keys, we got to legitimately check, think that it's working. So after that, we wrap it into its own application, and then from a hacker standpoint, there's a couple ways I can do this. I can roll it up on some torrent sites as my binary. They can just go and download for free. Maybe I've got something against EA. I really don't, but good memes. So maybe I can go after them specifically because I want them to lose profit. Or I could wrap my own malware inside my keygen program. And you want it because it's free. And but chances are you probably don't have money, so me doing that probably isn't too helpful because I'm not going to get anything from you. But point is, there's this, I can turn your system into part of my botnet, right? Or find your mom's
if you get
banking
enough information, you can open up credit cards in their name and then profit.
I don't have personal health information on my system, but if you do, I got a software generator for it if you want. All right, so chain bones here. So, all right, I was really hoping this would be a little more obvious. I couldn't believe this. I was looking for pictures for this on my deck. I'm like, I had to include this. This is incredible. I don't know if this they actually do this legitimately, but I was like, this is amazing. All right, so the PS3 custom firmware through video game. There was a time back in the olden days when you had a PS3 and you couldn't really do it. Well, actually, first you had a PS3 and you could load a custom operating system on it, right? And then they decided to take away that feature completely, so you couldn't do that. So they locked it down. So if you had any kind of firmware on there after a certain date, you couldn't come back to it, or you couldn't do custom stuff on there. So someone realized that there were some video games out there. So again, put yourself in this shoes that somebody could use your game for this kind of thing. I think it was like a MechWarrior game. I don't remember the specifics of it, but you can put this MechWarrior game into your PS3, load it up, and then they realized that there were some memory leaks in how it would load games from memory. Hint, hint for what's going to happen next. So they found this memory leak in this game that was running in the PS3, and they realized, well, wait, if we know that it's trying to get into memory here, I can just create something that when the game loads it, it will do what I want it to do once it gets loaded into the system. So I'm guessing you guys have no idea how some of this attack stuff works. So when your program loads up into memory, we think of it when you're looking at code, all this, you got these sub-functions and all this and whatever, I got objects that I'm referencing and doing all this. When you get into the into the system, it's executing everything in a single line saying, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. Oh, you want me to jump here, gotta do this, gotta do this. I jump back and do this. It's all linear. So what we're talking about with memory leaks is I'm saying gotta do this, gotta do this, gotta do this, but then I give it some kind of write operation that overwrites all the commands that come after it, and then I can tell it to execute it. That's a very simplified version, but just a bit, that's what we're trying to do. So we create this payload that says, all right, I want you to overwrite in memory all this stuff, and then execute it so I can take over the system. So what they do is they create the custom payload, store it in the saved memory slot on the memory card, load the game up, and profit. So this was a hack for a very long time. I don't remember if Microsoft, I don't remember if Sony ever went back on this, but there's a lot of ROMs now that will let you do this the easy way now. But this is how people figure out how to take over consoles, take over systems. But the point of this, and what I'm telling you guys is that because they didn't build the program correctly, now this entire platform was able to be exploited. All right. So, final thoughts. And yes, this is actually on my desk at work.
As well it should be.
Yes. Yes. It was awesome. I went to opening night of Deadpool, and they were just giving these things out. He's like cross reading something. I'm like, who could use this? And then I got to work, and I'm like, yes, I have a unicorn. All right, perfect. All right. So, final thoughts before we get to actually, I don't know if we have time for questions, but we'll get to that. So, final thoughts. I want you guys to think like a hacker to stop a hacker. That's really the gist of what we're trying to get at here. I would recommend for you guys, come up with ideas if you think someone might try to exploit or use your game against you or try to use it for their own benefits, right? Do that, you're not going to get it all. It's just reality. I mean, you've got people that are a lot smarter than all of us running around the world with zero time at all, and they're probably going to think up something that you can, but if you can make that harder for them, awesome, right? And by doing this earlier in the game, in the development process, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and effort later, and a lot of headache and heartache. So, and that's it.
We're going to bring up our next speaker. I'm going to cut off questions, but this was a really thorough, great presentation. And sorry if I interrupted. Erika?
Oh no.
How do you want to handle this?
We just have some remarks. Actually, we're not going to use that.
Yeah.
It's just also what? Flip around and
Yeah. Come on over.
Here. So yeah.
Mark's going to do an
Hey,
intro.
yeah. So I invited Erika. Do we have the camera? Camera good? Do you want to do that? Do we need the microphone to get the audio?
Can you hear?
Nope, you're good.
Can everybody hear?
Yeah, I want to. All right. So Erika is here. Saganworks. They're actually will be hiring not only for full-time folks but interns. So art or coding doesn't matter if you're interested. Even the game-related stuff, it is very applicable to the kind of stuff that they're going to be talking about, and the more research, theoretical-oriented stuff with visual spatial memory they're going to talk about here. So let's thank them, because they have like a whole team here. So thanks for coming.
Larry, if you want, I just emailed to you just a one-page, so with our logo, so you can at least know where we are. So
I will get that going.
Put that up. Thank you. Okay. So I'm Erika Block, CEO of Saganworks, and I am with Sean and Simon. We're going to talk a lot after we put our alongside. We're going to do more of a discussion rather than a lecture. There's going to be a lot of time for questions. Okay, so think about that. So Saganworks is not a gaming company. Saganworks is a startup. We're based in Ann Arbor. We've been around for just 6 months, and we hired our first team on August 1st. We're in the middle of, we're midway through our second prototype. We're in a kind of research and development phase. And so what Saganworks is, it solves a problem that I think all of us have. So we live online. We have documents online. We have photos, sound files. We've got URLs, bookmarks. Everything that we do is digital these days. And it lives on our computers, it lives in the cloud. And if we're really good at organizing the information, we might put it into file folders or tag it or have some kind of a system, but it's spread out everywhere, whether it's Dropbox, Pinterest, you got stuff on Facebook, you got stuff on Evernote, whatever tools you have, Google Drive. And even when we do a good job of organizing that information, it's really hard to refine it. And the more information, just think about your photos, the more information we have, the harder it is to find it. So over our lifetimes, increasingly, we gather all the stuff and we don't have an easy way to access it, right? We don't have a way to use it to give it context, and it's a lot of knowledge. So the tools that we have to organize our knowledge, actually, he's got the website, that's perfect. The tools that we have to organize and manage our content and our knowledge have not kept up with the knowledge that we have access to, the information we have access to. And part of the problem is that we're dealing with the sort of old school analog organization methods, file folders and labels. They go back to the libraries, they go back to filing methods. But all of us here are interested in these incredible 3D technologies that tap into our visual and spatial sort of capabilities. And there's a lot of data that shows that we remember things that we see or experience spatially, 90% more than the stuff that we read. We kind of retain maybe 22% of the words that we read versus 90% of what we see visually. So we're kind of in this really interesting new time where technology is starting to keep up with our brains, with the neuroscience behind how we interact in the world and how we see things. And what we're trying to do is take these emerging tools and create a knowledge management platform that will enable anybody to create visual spaces. It could be a room, it could be a garden. environment can be a laboratory, a rocket ship, it can be something that we've never thought of, and organize objects and knowledge within these spaces so we can better access and remember them. And ultimately, we hope, create more context and meaning and not lose all the stuff that we collect over a lifetime. And then eventually we'll be able to share that and collaborate and to find new meaning and new ways to solve problems. So that's kind of the big picture of what we're doing. It's rooted in a number of things, but I don't know, how many of you have heard of memory palaces? Okay, so somebody want to give me a definition of a memory palace? Anybody?
Sorry, it's like somewhere like that you can go to mentally and like recover like information that you've learned before that like you didn't think you could access, but you can find it in a different location.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an ancient, it's a really old technique. It goes back to the Greeks, and actually many old cultures, ancient cultures, have these visual techniques. The Aborigines in Australia have songlines, and there's paintings of these songlines. They have this way of telling a narrative of imagery and sound. I've seen, these are some images that I'll share at another point. There's some Western African Lukasa memory boards where people carve visual, they carve out shapes and they carve out a sort of a landscape on wood to help remember. There's other cultures that use knots where you can create a series of knots. And it was sort of in cultures before we had writing and pulling the way that we passed on information was often oral. In order to remember that information, people created these incredible visual systems. And so the memory palaces that are maybe most known come from the Greeks, where in order to remember all of this community knowledge, you kind of built these spaces in your head. It might have been a place that you knew or a place that you invented. Teams was putting crazy things together that you wouldn't expect to sort of jar your memory. So essentially we're playing right now with a new technology, well, a new platform that's using technologies like media and all the things that you guys have begun working with, and enabling people to build these spaces to better manage all the information. And memory palaces are kind of a piece of the inspiration. So that's what we're doing. And what I would like to do is, and what I'll do is I'll really quickly tell you a little bit about them, and I'm going to ask Simon and Sean, who are two of our developers, to tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we've got a few we'll sort of do a little panel discussion on this. So this is my second tech startup. I am the founder of another company that built supply chain management tools for local food systems, so helping you work with local farmers to get food to restaurants. And then prior to that, I actually had a theater company, and I'm trained as a playwright and director and storyteller. And as you guys know, within the gaming community, games are about stories. Theater is clearly storytelling. I used to say supply chain stories. I still say supply chain stories. It's making sure the right person gets the right story at the right time so the right thing happens. And memory is also, when you sort of think about our collective memories, our family memories, our personal memories, we think about the stories and narratives of our lives and what's coming before us. And so there's an interesting program, storytelling, that continues to run the development, which is actually kind of one of the more fun things of this. So I am going to introduce Simon Preston, who's our lead developer.
Hi everyone, Simon McCluskey. I'm the lead developer at Saganworks. So I come from a software development background. I've been doing software development for the better part of 3 decades. Hold a variety of positions in companies of all sizes, from startups to big corporations. And I've spent a large portion of my career working as a consultant, so I have a lot of variety, working with lots of different companies on a lot of different projects over the years. As you can imagine, with that sort of length of career, I've worked with lots and lots of different technologies over the years and seen a lot of changes in the industry. Most of the work I've done has been hands-on, so I've worked in a software development capacity, all sorts of different positions, from developer to lead developer to software architect, pretty much the whole gambit, and also some leadership and organizational positions as well. Most recently, I was working for Lamasoft in Ann Arbor. You may not have heard of that company, but we saw that company grow from 10 years ago, a very small company. I joined as maybe the third person in the company as the VP of development there. We grew that company to about 500 employees. So fast forward to now, I've made the switch to come and work over at Saganworks, when I sort of learned what we were doing over there and the application and the it was very interesting to me. While on the face of it, it looks fairly straightforward. Basically a 3D kind of way to visually organize information, as you can imagine. There are a lot of challenges in terms of making that work in a practical way. So that was intriguing. And it gave me the opportunity to work with some cool technologies as well. So that's my story, quick version of it.
My name is John Carpy. My career has largely been in 3D graphics and 3D applications. Back in the day, this is 12 years ago, everything we did was OpenGL, which thankfully we've moved on. Now we use Unity and Unreal, things like that. Almost all my experience has been outside of games, specifically, but still using all the same technologies. So I've done a lot with driving simulators, flight simulators, basically where you're putting a person in the virtual world and you're either training them to do a specific task or you're trying to glean information from them about products or processes or whatever else. Fast forward 10 years and I thought, hey, I'm going to make a game. So I did that, I made a game, and
what game? Come on, you gotta tell us.
It's called Tiny Town VR.
Okay.
It's a casual world building game in VR. Check it out. If you're lucky enough to have headsets. During the development of that, I met up with Erika, and just the vision of the company and my sort of interests lined up well, and so joined Saganworks.
So real quick, the VR part on the game was. There are a lot of games that were VR. By the way, my company, we refurbish, remaster, reboot classic games, so I'm all right with your OpenGL stuff. But when you say VR, it was not. I mean, it was not truly VR. It was virtual, right?
This is a current.
The game that I made was recent.
Okay.
And it's truly VR. It's just Oculus 5 stuff.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. So I did that, took some time off work to do that. VR is tough right now to make money, so I can speak to that. So looking around for work and found some interesting people and hooked up here.
I was going to ask, in terms of data management, in terms of knowledge management, one of the things that are maybe you're going to address this. One of the things that gets really interesting is the amount of data that you can do through VR.
So it's interesting because this actually ties right into we've got a lot of things that we want to talk about. So Saganworks has a very big vision to help to leverage all of these emerging technologies. We are right now we decided to build our prototypes as a desktop app. It's a 3D desktop app that you download, and it's actually designed so as it moves onto the tablet, it won't have to completely redesign the interface. And we are exploring whether and when VR comes in. We're also looking at augmented and mixed reality even more so. We think what we're building today is not what we envision 3 years from now, but we have to start somewhere. So this is actually, I think, one of the things that I want to talk about. I think this is relevant to folks in this room, is that you can do a lot in VR, but we don't believe it's commercial and convenient for most people who will be using this kind of service. We think we've been talking about whether there will always be, there will be multi-platform apps of Saganworks, including potentially a VR app, and that's something that we're exploring right now. We're 3 months into building the prototypes. But so Saganworks has this big knowledge management vision. It also, and this actually speaks to the business model, we're also really concerned with issues of security and privacy of information, and we're deliberately not building a business that's going to rely on selling the data of our users and We're going to have this be, there'll be a free version of it, but there will also be things that you will pay for that may include super encrypted technology for storing data down the line. And then the other thing that we're really concerned about is the level of discourse on the internet. And we're not necessarily trying to build a company that will have 500 million users. I mean, we think there will be many millions of users that will be interested.
Right, you don't want to stay that low, right?
Yeah,
but more like the Facebook vision. Right?
Exactly, yeah. So but we don't want to have we want to ensure that the knowledge management tools that we create will encourage the best possible curation and knowledge sharing, and there will be fact and scientific inquiry. Saganworks is an homage to Carl Sagan in terms of science and knowledge and fact. And so there's sort of these three, if you look at it as the three-legged stool, there's the knowledge management, which is the first and most important service that we can provide. But over time, we're really concerned with both privacy and the integrity of knowledge and knowledge sharing and discourse. And so in order to do that, you can't be a little startup and figure all that out in one fell swoop. So one of the things that we're doing that I think is super important whenever you're trying to do something at any scale is to figure out how to break it down into pieces. And I mean, I know, we talk a lot about this, and Simon has a lot of experience, and we go back and forth with how to teach ourselves to say no and set limits and to do things that we know won't be what we want, but will help us learn whether or not we're on the right track. And so I'm wondering if you guys want to talk a little bit about how we're approaching the development process without losing track of that big vision.
Yeah, so what Eric is talking about is basically deciding to narrow down the scope of these prototypes that we're working on right now so they become practical, something we can build in a relatively short time frame. We can adopt a lean and agile approach to get something built that's functional as quickly as possible, that we can then play with, we can show it to people, and we can get feedback that will help us then move to the next level and repeat that process again. So it's key that we can develop functions and features quickly and get them into a form that people can actually play with. Because the type of application we're talking about, it's very tactile. You really have to see it and play with it in order to even understand what it is. And there are a lot of questions. There are probably more questions than we have answers for about how the application should actually work. We have lots of ideas, but we don't know which ones are going to work. And we probably have a lot of questions we haven't even thought of yet. And in order to kind of facilitate driving through all of those questions and homing in, if you will, on what the application should look like, at least in its initial form, is an iterative process. So that's kind of how we're handling it right now. We're really not worrying too much about whether or not the application we built today is the thing we're going to actually complete. It is almost certainly not going to be. It's more a means to an end. It's a way to learn what that application is.
No, that's great.
There's more that we can bring up, but does anybody have any questions? Marks, the stuff we have, and we're actually taking an approach. There's two different ways to look at this. The first is building an application that will integrate or sync with any cloud service. So we are working on an API that will enable us to synchronize with different services. And we've already started to do that. We're looking at direct integrations. We're looking at we have the outlines of an Android and iOS app that will allow you to put the photos you take on your phone or send text messages into the system. And then we also have set up a Zap. Do you guys know what Zapier is? Like Zaps or if this then that. And basically this middleware where you can connect cloud-based services and you say, if you create a note in Evernote, send a tweet out or something like that. So you can say, if you create a note in Evernote that's in this folder, a document in Google that has got this, that goes into this folder, send it to your Saganworks. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. And then over time, we're also looking at becoming a repository for file. And we have talked about whether we want to have people add notes, or whether it's, certain things, maybe you can
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing to that, which you mentioned that it's easy to forget. Right? You take some notes and you have them somewhere, you forget either where they are or you forget you have them at all.
Or you don't take down everything you meant to.
Yeah, and that's where we are believing that the notion of associating the information we gather with something visual. That will be much easier to remember. There's a lot of research out there. In fact, this idea up that you're more likely to remember something you see. Visual, strong visual image than you are text. So if you can do that association in your mind at the time that you capture that piece of information, whatever it may be, it could be a PDF document, it could be an excerpt from that, it could be something you type, that you're much more likely to remember it, or at least recognize it when you see it visually in some spatial context. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I still remember like different moments in time when I was really little, like things that struck me. I'm sure a lot of people do. But yeah, I think
I want to add something to this, but then I will go into a couple questions. So, think about right now when you walk into your house or your office or your kitchen. You know when things are. We have a kind of almost like a muscle memory as well. You know which way to turn to go look for the thing if it's in the right place. So it's also that if we create these spaces, if you're able to, whether it's through a 3D app or browser or whether whatever it is, whatever the platform you're using, if you walk or if you immerse yourself into the space and you put the information there and there's some meaning to you in terms of the visual placement, then hopefully that will help. I mean, that what we think will make it good enough. That's the theory. You had a question?
Yeah, my question was going to be like, I can understand like if you write a sticky note or you write a sticky note, you put it somewhere, you remember it and hopefully remember it. But like when you're saying something, you want to put something in a visual. Sometimes I think of, well, did you want to like, here's some information that you put down that you want to remember. Do you want it to be actually visual, like an apple or something like that to remember, and you know where that placement is? Or is it something like, oh, I took these notes, I took them in a visual world. Do I remember them now any better than I would have just taken notes normally? Or how would you convert that like into like a visual idea? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the big challenges of books, because if you look at everything, like people that use mnemonics, memory techniques, it's a very personal thing. It's not easy to learn how to do it. You have to come up with visual vocabulary that you can use to translate from more mundane information to visual information. So that's part of what we're experimenting with. Is one of the many experiments we have to kind of figure out the next thing is, will people remember things just because they have a visual image, or do they have to create a strong connection between visual image and information that they have?
I have a text file that reminds me of what that apple on my computer was saying.
Well, and that is one of the things that we're exploring is it useful to fill a room, let's say, with data from whether it's a URL or a PDF or whatever form that's in it that converts to some relevant object, reading the metadata or reading the keyword or whatever that looks like. And that's a complicated algorithm that you could work on, but we don't even know if there's value to that yet, because you think about how you can kind of clutter a room with objects and all of a sudden it becomes less meaningful. So those are things we actually have that, we put that into the rabbit hole pile, because we have a lot of things that we sort of avoid going down the rabbit hole, but it's something that we got out there to explore. And there's design questions, there's lots of different things that we can do that. So it's interesting, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we are asking ourselves all the time.
Yeah, and it's important to keep in mind we're not building a software version of the memory palace, because unlike the memory palace where everything is in the mind, we're literally trying to remember a fact. You don't have to, it's an external memory system, just like storing data on a hard drive. You can just click on it and you can see what the fact is. What you have to remember is that you have it there, and like what you were saying, you've got to remember that you have it, and you've got to be able to find it. Right? That's the important thing. and be able to organise all the relevant information that's important to you that you may gather from a variety of different sources, again, in some kind of fashion that's relevant or meaningful, depending on what your purpose for that is.
Do you have any like pictures of like your prototypes or your concepts?
Not yet. I mean, we're too early to share, but soon we will. You and then after
this is going to sound kind of broad, and kind of simplified. This sounds like a service your people will be interacting with as commonly as they will like Twitter or Google or like their gallery, any of those information services. And none of those really involve 3D space in the way that you guys are going for, but they're all incredibly accessible. So I guess I'm wondering, are there any kind of specific ways you guys are planning to format this in a way that will be incredibly accessible? Because it's going to be, with all the points, it seems like it's going to be getting it to as many people as possible.
I mean, that part of this is starting with a desktop app that will be able to be, as we say, power up your laptop or sit down at your desktop. That's going to right now hit the most people in terms of getting users into the system and figuring out where we can create the most value for the users. What we think is that the technology that hasn't yet hit the market is where this is going to live, where it will be ubiquitous, but it's going to take 5 years to get there. In the meantime, we can build a really useful service and start getting people into it and learn from those users and grow with them. And so that's sort of the balancing act, is how do you not lose sight of what you know you're going to get to when nobody has those devices with them. We don't really know. We have some ideas.
Is this something you're thinking will extend well into VR or like VR adjacent technologies for like common
AR, VR, AR, mixed reality, like sort of taking the HoloLens further or looking at some of the glasses that are coming through. We've got and it may be that there's a suite of apps that work in different platforms depending on where you are, which, by the way, most services have that. So there may be a VR experience that's super immersive. You can go into your Sagan is a room and Saganworks is a collection. Or you can, there's something that you can whip up on your phone when you need to, or something that you may be able to sort of cast into your reality, or maybe overlay data. So those are the things that we're looking at. We're building for hardware that isn't yet there. And so we're trying to give people something that's got great use right now. So
a couple of things I want to add to that. So, the issue that you're working on is one of the big impediments to using VR. And a lot of people use VR applications. You fully immerse yourself in this world that is created with all of the knowledge surrounding you. That's awesome. The problem is, you have to carry your VR goggles around with you every time you want to get something with VR goggles on. It's like not like it, right? People are to do that, and how many people actually have VR goggles? But down the road, this situation may change as the technology advances. But one of the other things that sort of relates to what you're talking about, that we have been looking at, is the notion of how can we sort of improve monitoring as people are going about their day-to-day business and they come across information that is actually interesting. Maybe there would be some use of mobile in the form of capture applications and things that you can use, web browser extensions and things of that nature that may not be the main sort of 3D app itself, but they are partial functionalities or things that go with it that you can put on your phone and then as you're going about your day-to-day business, you come across the images of an article that you're taking notes on your phone, you can send that over into the table. And then along with potentially some algorithmic intelligence, we can figure out what you want to do with that information. And you can have some rules set up, for example, that will when this certain type of information lies, I'm going to automatically put it over here in this filing cabinet on the shelf. And when I do come back to my saving later, I'll find it there and I can do something else with it. That's it.
I have a question, and then I'll come over and notice.
I have a question more out of curiosity, just to see if my rudimentary aligns with what is actually happening. So it's based off of a memory problem. So would that mean I'd be using visual mnemonics in that? I would say in my Saganworks space, I had like, I don't know, true life to scale model of my crappy apartment. So I have, you know, over my broken sink, I have fixed the sink, or I have your eggs are going bad over the refrigerator. Sort of just like actual 3D spaces that are sort of visual indicators for things that I need to do.
So that's an interesting point because with memory palaces, you generally have areas that you're communicating about. So it could be at the top, but it could be somewhere else. It could be another area.
That's the 3D version.
Your fantasy, yeah.
But we're not sure if that is necessary for this. If you have a 3D environment that let's say you can pick from the house, and as Erika said, there's a whole variety of different possibilities that come to that you can become familiar with their spatial layout by walking around them using a VR sensor within the 3D app. And that creates the spatial recognition for you, just like if you were walking around the building and that you're sort of trying to get familiar with its layout, so you can start using that in your mind's eye to lay out your mnemonic information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see. I'm trying to keep, so I think you had a question, we're going to go back over here, and then we'll keep on doing this.
So I don't mean to ask something that maybe you're playing information pretty close to the chest, but do you guys have any partnerships or potential early adopters, maybe city records or something, where you're looking at putting this into place to kind of?
We will be, but we're not ready. We won't be doing that until next year. We have about 18 months of R&D, and so we're prototyping, and then we're going to be releasing an alpha to some early adopters. And if anybody's interested and you want to go to our website and sign up, we are going to be going to selected communities, and we'll invite the first 100 users, and then we'll kind of expand on that.
It should be a place that you return to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why we're here too. That's why I reached out to Mars initially, and hitting around. So we definitely are going to be looking for people that can understand where we are when we say alpha. So yes. You had a question.
Yeah, this might be a bit down the rabbit hole a bit, or something like that. But are you considering state-based memory in this? Of just more subtly of how one's emotional state affects how well they remember something, or in severe cases, chemically altered state.
So you want it to work when you're drunk as well as when you're not?
Service contract issue, right?
No, it's sort of, would you be having things that would give an emotional cue because you tend to remember other things that made you angry when you are already angry?
Yeah.
Things like that, or would you have something that is that could be reading a person's face and trying to find what emotional state they are in, and something like that? I am not quite grasping. I don't think what the entire project is, because it's all seemingly very nebulous.
If you were in this room and you were to make a saving of this room, if there's tables, let's say there were some shelves, there's a whiteboard, there's a monitor, and you would be able to put the knowledge that you capture, whether it's files from the cloud, photos, a bucket of information that you got, URLs, bookmarks, whatever, you put them in this space, and you can arrange them how you want. You might be able to throw a bunch of videos on that monitor that will have some sort of a playing capacity with it. And some of this is where right now the information is stored and then you go off to the original source, but we'll build some of the browser type capabilities within objects within your room. That's very cool. So you would build a space that was familiar to you, and as you gather information, you would organize it in a space that could be a space like this. You could put objects or cases or pictures or slides, whatever you would design it. One of the key thing here is that we'll create templates and we'll give people things to build off of. It's enabling anybody to create these 3D spaces. So it's kind of a world building tool, but we're not going for people who are people who want to make games and people who want to program, we're giving people the ability to create worlds in a simple way that will help them better organize and share their information.
Okay, so basically the state-based memory would be just the act of going into this place would sort of be in itself a certain mental state.
If you've created it in that, you could create a space in whatever mindset you have that day and revisit it almost and sort of connect it to that. But you didn't have your hand up.
Yeah, I think the time efficiency one is really interesting and it's one that we sort of had fierce internal debates. where I said, I don't want to walk over there and go get my information. Like, otherwise pull up right doing my search and then Mac bar. But the converse of that is, well, if that process of walking over there in itself helps you remember things immediately, like right then, or helps you in the future to remember things later, then there might be value in that. So I guess the question becomes, in what circumstances do you allow or force users to do that walkthrough, and where do you provide shortcuts? And maybe there are shortcuts where, I know I have a bookshelf over there, I can just point out like one of the VR pointer and the door, the information comes up in a more traditional 2D UI to sort of surround you, to try to get towards some power user features maybe, where people can get their information faster, if that's what they want to do at that moment.
And your question, in addition to that, was also about building these worlds. So we would say probably 80% of the users are not going to build a space from scratch. So we're creating templates. We actually couldn't make it, but we have a really good, really accomplished 3D artist who's been, we just started a couple of weeks ago. And so we're creating some real environments and we're creating some invented environments. And so essentially there'll be a library or a selection of the spaces that you can take and you can alter them. Because again, I don't think most people, you don't want this to interrupt your workflow when you're trying to do research or you're trying to get stuff done. And yes, there'll be some initial setup, but over time we think that will be something we can minimize. But at the same time, we're exploring and we'll continue to explore the theory behind somebody assembling that space is also going to aid in the memory process. And so it's this, you don't want to lose that. So there's kind of a completely automated version. And then there's, you can turn all that automation off and do everything manually. It's sort of going to automate both options. You had a question in there.
All right. So one more question, and then we can continue to talk.
Okay. Can we do two since we have two people that are there?
Absolutely.
1 and 2. There we go.
So, I guess my question is kind of two-part in a way, but you mentioned that you're not recreating the memory palace concept virtually, but it kind of sounds like that's what you're doing, and so I'm kind of not sure where that disconnect is. Why not? And then, because I see that this has a tremendous amount of potential in helping people to develop stronger, better memories, things like that, even organically. And then I'm curious, just to what degree will people have the liberty to not just create the space the way they want, but to create their objects the way they want. So, for example, I've got a background in human psychology, emotionology, all that stuff, right? But so in a memory palace idea, if I'm wanting to create a strong association with something, I come up with something silly like a purple cat, and that association helps strengthen my memory around it. So, what degree of freedom will I have as a user to create my purple cats or whatever?
Yeah, I think you're right. We do want to have those sort of funky, weird associations and let people make those, but we don't want to burden users with remembering what was the purple cat?
Yeah.
But if you see the purple cat, you'll probably remember what knowledge you associate with it.
Right.
But you don't actually have to remember the purple cat, you just see it.
Right.
So it's sort of like a...
And you also don't have to remember what every detail about that information. That was the point I was making about. It's not exactly the same thing. It's not a complete parallel to a memory palace, because in the memory palace, you're using that visual image to literally remember the information itself.
Right.
You don't really need to do that because it's going to be there. You stored it in your savings. You can just open it up and you can actually look at it. It's fine if you want to go that far and just go, hey, I see a purple cat. I know exactly what it is. I remember the note I took, even though it was 14 sentences. I somehow remember all of that. But chances are you won't, and that's not what you're trying to do.
No, but ideally you remember that you took a...
You'll remember that.
14 note,
right.
Whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And to touch briefly on what you were saying a second ago, do I walk over there or do I just kind of use the force to bring it to me or whatever, right? Like everybody remembers things different ways, and so I think structuring your software in a way that accommodates different ways of remembering things, I think you're going to get a broader acceptance and user out of it.
That's right.
And to the real answer to your question and to many of these questions is we aren't sure. And we don't need to be. And some of it is we've got some hunches and we do a prototype where we establish a series of questions and we see whether we answer those questions and what new questions come up. And we have an outline of what the first 3 prototypes are like, and we'll kind of evaluate that. And that the process enables us to make sure that we don't kind of predetermine this incredibly complex personal sort of process and system. And that's been, I think, what we're in the midst of doing, is we're figuring out how to reveal what we don't know, or how to reveal the problems as we go. You have one question, and then I know we need to stop.
So going along towards the creative side of this project that you guys are doing, when say I have my own art studio and I want to have a reference bank, how would you guys go along with the route of going about that?
That's actually one of the use cases that we've been building out, different use cases. And so for artists that want to display stuff, and this goes back to somebody else's question about sharing, we will enable people to share their spaces with other people, and they'll do that. We'll be looking at collaboration. We'll also be looking at one of the business models we're exploring is whether you can create a really valuable resource that you don't want to sell access to. Whether it's a $10 access or whether I'm selling a limited number of one of the ideas somebody said, if Mario Batali has this incredible Italian wine book or collection he creates instead of a book, then that may be something that people might pay $50 for. Or you can use it as a portfolio space. And then there are artists that could create experiences that would enhance their art making. And then maybe there'll be links where you can sell your stuff within it. But so that's the kind of thing, looking at those kind of marketplace sort of models where you have control over that, or you can make it free. Or teachers can create those spaces as part of a lesson. I mean, so those are the kinds of cases. The other one would be sort of I've been thinking about a friend who's writing a book and doing a photography book, and he can build a Sagan for his research, and then as he turns that into his manuscript, he can share access with that of the Sagan to his editors and the book designers, and then once they've gone through sort of testing those, checking the references and all the things you could do, then you could kind of do another version that would be a companion to the book when it comes out. So those are other ways that you could look at this. So it's artists and researchers are actually some of the early adopters we expect. I know we have to stop.
Erica, thank you very much.
So we're hiring, and I'm going to put this out there. We're also really looking to have a more diverse staff in terms of a range of people and voices. And so if you're looking for, go to our website, and we're going to be, for people that are students or early career, we're going to be adding, there's going to be some 3D art internships coming up in the summer. At some point over the next year, we'll be adding software development internships. But we're also looking for content curators as well, so keep an eye out.
I'll be happy to come by and kibbles. So you went to NYU, right?
I did.
I graduated from there also. Just goes to show how low their standards were.
Thank you, guys. Good questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Out there.
But I'm essentially I like figures, but there's no real commercialization. I come from a sub background. The actual research side. The explanation of the concept itself. They make $1 billion off of science. Security law. What'd you say? He was funny. Hi, I'm Rick. Nice to meet you. What's your name?